Hi, everybody.
Hello. Welcome back to 6 Feet Unfiltered.
I'm Chloe.
I'm Courtney. We're messes over here.
Yeah, it really what we have said before has been coming true that
We've manifested it on our own.
yeah, it's just we've been so busy. I got deathly ill and shit's just been crazy. You're way more busier, I feel like, with the kids in the summertime too.
Nonstop. I smell like a garbage can.
So, yeah, but we're here and we're still doing our best. So, Okay. Today, we're diving into 6 Feet Under, Season 2, Episode 4, Driving Mr. Mossback. This episode opens with a death on a Seattle tour bus, one that's more deadpan than dramatic, setting the tone for an episode full of emotional landmines, awkward reunions, and quiet unraveling. Nate volunteers to drive to Seattle to retrieve Mr. Mossback's body, and Claire takes along, leading to sibling bonding, vegan meatloaf sabotage, and a visit to Nate's old friend, Lisa, who is very much not over him. Meanwhile, Ruth is in full blueprint drafting, boundary burning mode, confronting her past and present relationships with unmatched intensity. Back in LA, David steps up in a big way to support Keith and Taylor, while Rico feels taken advantage of. Brenda's spiraling continues courtesy of Margaret, who ropes her into a wild stakeout and a deeply unhinged confrontation outside Tranquility Spa in La Cañada. This episode touches on big themes: secrecy, longing, caretaking, and the quiet desperation of being known almost completely. Let's get into it.
All right. The opening death scene. Okay. So we open this episode of 6 Feet Under with a death that's dry, dark, and quietly devastating in the way only this show can pull off. In Seattle, a tour guide wraps up a history spiel on the bus and turns to the driver with a line that perfectly sets the tone. I don't know about you, but I could definitely use a fucking cigarette. She drops her passengers off at Pike's, which is hilarious because she was just talking in her customer service voice.
Yes.
And then, I don't know about you, but I could do with a fucking cigarette.
Yep.
She drops her passengers off at Pike Place Market, ready to clock out, until she notices one man sitting quietly in the back, Harold Mossback, elderly and alone, hasn't moved. She walks back, takes one look and sighs. Got another dead one back here, Larry. Of course his name is fucking Larry. It's bleak, it's weirdly funny, and it's painfully real. No drama, no buildup, just a man dying quietly in public while life rolls on around him. The kind of death that gets one sentence, maybe two, and a shrug. And with that, we're back in the world of 6 Feet Under, where even the most unremarkable endings still manage to say something big.
Okay, so poor Mr. Mossback. I hope that he enjoyed his final moments on the bus tour. But definitely LOL'd at her line. We got
Larry.
another dead one back here, Larry. So
I wonder what he was looking at, because his eyes were open.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we find out later that his wife had died, like, within the last year or something. So,
Heartbroken.
yeah, sad and just like a really depressing thing to think about. But definitely a very, like, non-dramatic death, which I'm glad that they have some of those in there because
sometimes that's how it goes.
Yeah, a lot of times. So after the death scene, the episode opens with Claire back in Gary's office talking for the first time since Claire was questioned by the detective in the last episode. So Gary points out that she had missed her last 3 sessions, and it's apparent that Claire is pissed at Gary. She says she only came to the session because the school sent a letter to her mom saying that she would get suspended if she didn't go.
I'm wondering why the fuck that's the case. Like,
I think it's because of the foot. I think she got in trouble, and I think she had to go to the counseling sessions because of the whole foot situation.
Okay.
And then now that she's not going, so they're like, yo, you still have to do this.
Oh, my good Lord.
because she definitely got in trouble with the school because of the foot, and then I think Keith helped
because
her.
she's the one who put the foot there.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So Gary says, oh, I thought maybe that you had something you wanted to talk about. And Claire's response is, with you, yeah, right, which perfectly clear. Gary goes on to explain that it was his job to cooperate with the police.
I thought he did great.
He did. I think that he did a good job. But he also said that he was actually doing her a favor by also being there because they had originally wanted to interrogate her alone. So that's even more added context that he really did, like, go out of his way to do something good for her.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, like, fucking her over. But, of course, she's a teenager and only sees, like, you called me in your office and I got questioned by the cop, so fuck you. So he also tells her that they haven't found Gabe yet, which was kind of him because I'm sure she's wondering, even though she says she doesn't care. And Gary's honestly a really good counselor. I said he assures her that she did the right thing by calling the police and even offers for her to throw one of his belongings to get her frustration out.
Which I thought was hilarious because I actually say this to my oldest. I'm sure I'll say it to all of them about throwing something or yelling or screaming. Like when I pick her up from school, she's 6. And school is hard. She's also deaf in one ear, and we just found out about it. So she's been like overcompensating for all of these things. And I found out that it's really hard for kids with any disability to try to almost mask it or just get through the day.
Yeah.
And so she'll get in the car and she's just got her grumpy pants on, I call them. And I'll be like, do you want to throw something? Do you want to scream? And like, we'll just do the things. And it is so therapeutic. So I thought it was hilarious that he said that.
I love that. That must be, I mean, clearly there's probably like science behind it or something. Because
because you're getting
like your
frustration. Like I have a lot of friends that do
but...
boxing or something.
I'd rather just throw something. But okay, so he points out that she's feeling scared for Gabe because she cares about him. And I think that Gary's really helping Claire work through her emotions. And honestly, that's a really cool thing for them to have put in the show like this because it somewhat normalizes therapy or asking for help, which once again was way ahead of the show's time. So the scene ends when Claire knocks Gary's coffee over on purpose. Like she gets frustrated and she's like, poof. And the look on his face was hilarious too because he's like,
but he tried to contain himself.
Yes.
That was really good acting.
It was. It really was. And then after she thanks him and says, that does feel better. Thank you.
I also want to note too, obviously I watched this episode probably 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I do remember though watching Claire in the counselor's office and thinking, she is incredibly good at acting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All
really
of the
good.
Facial expressions, the perfect like silence timings, the
like the grunts, even like
the nonverbals.
Yeah,
everything.
There
I was just so impressed.
In that scene where she did. Oh, I wish I could remember exactly what it was. But
start talking. Maybe I'll figure it out.
She said it was just when they were going back and forth, and she was like, "With you, like, yeah, right." And then when she's slowly starting to kind of open up, and just like like it was just so
you could see the body language,
like teenage, like a bitchy teenager, just like we were. But yeah, very good.
And Gary's incredible.
Too. So next we see David doing the intake for Mr. Mossback with Mr. Mossback's 2 children, adult children. And they explained to David that their father had been doing many package bus tours since their mother had passed away and that his body is still up in Seattle. And they also vehemently insist that they do not fly his body back down to LA because he was terrified of flying.
I can't fucking stand those lines. I don't know why. It drives me absolutely nuts.
The lines, like that scene.
That's the second time that somebody has like said something like that. Or it was the shoes. We can't bury him in those.
Oh, yeah.
That one actually I can kind of see.
Yeah.
But the flying back, like, are you kidding me? The look on David's face.
Yeah.
Was he the one doing it?
Yes. He was like, that's literally the next thing I said. He had another classic awkward David moment here. Yeah. He starts explaining that they can have him shipped by freight. And that's how Abe Lincoln was returned home after his death, packed in ice. And the adult children of Mr. Mossback do not seem impressed by this display of knowledge. But I don't know. It is obviously ridiculous, but I can see how people in that state of having just lost someone, like they're not thinking rationally.
Probably. You're probably right. The shoes one back in that other episode with the sandals or some shit.
Yeah.
That I could see.
Like, it's like
Barry and
forever.
Kelsey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like flying them back. Oh my God. Get out of here. Then I'm sure there's people that think that. And I'm so sorry if I offended you. That was a moment of.
Oh no. But I mean, it's like he's already. What's the worst thing that could have happened to him when he was flying? That he would die
again.
But he's
gonna die
dead,
again.
So it's like the worst thing that could happen has already happened. So it's so stupid, but it's just, I feel like they're not even comprehending it, like that he's gone, which is
because they haven't had their closure yet too either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about the stages of grief, obviously we talked about before with this, but when we find out that people are dead, it's always just like doesn't set in right away,
Totally valid. That's all valid, and I have to throw out there that I was initially irritated But then when you peel back the layers, you're like, okay, it's really not that big of a deal. But I was like, oh.
Like, come on, you're making this harder for everybody. But
The look on David's face just killed me.
hilarious. So, okay, the next scene shows us Keith at Carla's apartment with his mom and Taylor again. So Keith's mom, Lucille, has called Keith over to care for Taylor because she has to return home to care for his father after he had a hernia. Taylor expresses concern about Grandpa dying and shares that her friend's brother died, which offers us an interesting insight and highlights that she has been exposed to the concept of death without any of her caretaker's knowledge, judging by the surprised looks on Keith and Lucille's faces. So Keith mentions that he would like to know where Carla is and asks Lucille if Carla had even offered to return when she told her that she needed to go care for his dad. And Lucille reluctantly admits that they have not heard from Carla at all and that her phone has been disconnected. So Keith says shit, and Lucille scolds him for swearing in front of Taylor. And then Taylor tells Keith that she doesn't want to go to his house and asks if he can just come stay there with her. And I honestly felt so bad for her here because I remember being a kid and my mom bringing me to my grandma's, and I was really wanting my grandma to just come to my house because it was my safe space. I didn't realize that at the time, but looking back now, that makes so much sense. But I loved my grandma's house too, and I love being there. But looking back,
it's not the same.
No, it's just, and especially
you have to get up and go to school.
Yeah, and you want your routine like as a kid, and that's why it's so important.
And as an adult, you should know how to regulate those types of things, but as a kid you don't. It's
exactly. So I just related to that feeling as a kid of being sick and feeling like you're being shipped around everywhere. But anyway, Keith explains to Taylor that they have to go to his house because all of his things are there. And she asks, what about my things? And I was like, that's valid. Like, that's what I mean. Like, hello, what about me? Like, that's how she's feeling. I felt her. So he tells her that she can take them with her. And she says no, because he'd probably steal them.
I thought that was weird too.
It was hilarious, but like weird. Yeah. Why? I mean, it was
because
just
he's gay. Like she thinks that he's going to start.
I think it's just she thinks that's just like, I don't know.
I would have said that to
probably
my
said
sister too.
shit. Yeah. Like her mom probably says shit about people that she's around, like, oh, they're gonna fucking steal my shit, and then so now Taylor said, I don't know, who knows, but it was just like, oh god,
Lucille steal my shit.
Laughed at that too, which I thought was kind of funny. And Lucille gives Taylor a hug and tells her to be good for Keith and says that she'll come back as fast as she can. As soon as Lucille walks out the door, Taylor tells Keith, I know a lot worser words than shit, you know. And Keith responds, so do I. So it was kind of iconic. He matched her energy a little bit. I feel like he obviously needs to learn a little bit about how to deal with her correctly, but he's good for her because he's not going to let her. I mean, she needs
He'll keep her in line.
Yeah, she needs someone to say something. Yeah. Say something back to her and not let her walk all over everybody.
This whole scenario just kills me. And I don't remember being so feeling directly impacted by it the first time I watched it. And I think it is because I'm a mom now and I'm like so rooting for Carla that almost like blind, like I don't believe that she's back on her shit or something. I don't know.
Like not wanting to believe it.
And I still actually don't know for sure because I can't remember.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this like,
I don't remember either what exactly ends up happening. I mean, I feel like they're pretty much throwing it in her face that, I mean, you can't just leave your kid.
Agreed.
and have your phone disconnected and not.
And then I'm also like, why is nobody sending the police out there to find her? If you're
they're enabling. Her mom is an enabler for sure because she's just like, oh, she's fine. Nothing's wrong. I'm just going to stay here.
I would be so concerned.
Yeah. I think Keith's more angry.
And I don't think that Grandma, Keith, and clearly not Mom, are even understanding the silent impact this is having on Taylor.
Yeah.
To have that absence and the unknown.
Definitely not Carla. I feel like, yeah, Keith's worried about it, but probably doesn't fully understand it. And I don't think
because they're in it right now.
Yeah. For sure.
Just sucks.
It does.
Fucking
it's really
sucks
sad.
So bad.
So next we see the Fishers having dinner, and Nate asks David how the Mossback's intake went. And David tells Nate that they need to figure out how to get a body shipped back from his old stomping ground, Seattle. And he explains that the freight lines and Amtrak are all booked up until the following week. And to David's surprise, Nate offers to drive up and pick up Mr. Mossback's body without hesitation. He tells David that he hasn't been back since Christmas and he would like to see his old friends and get the rest of his things. So Ruth asks David, like, kind of interrupts the conversation and asks David if he's met any nice young men recently, and tells him that she wishes he'd open himself up more. The door to your house only opens from the inside, you know. Still unheard the plan bullshit, and Nate giggles at that, which was funny.
I was so dead hearing, like, have you met any nice men, David? Just so odd.
She's so awkward, and but she once again, she's trying so hard. Like, she's trying. She's not. She could be like one of those horrible people who pretend like her son isn't gay and doesn't ask at all. Like, she's being weird as hell, but at least she's trying. Like, I just always feel so bad for her. But I also am always so annoyed of her at the same time.
Yes. It's a both and kind of a situation.
Yes. Yeah. So next, Ruth questions Claire about Gabe, and David and Nate exchange nervous looks, knowing what actually happened.
Because Ruth doesn't know.
No, she doesn't at all.
Oh my God. Okay.
And not wanting Ruth to find out. So Claire tells Ruth that Gabe joined the Hare Krishna, which, if you are like me and did not know, it's a branch of Hinduism focused on devotion to Krishna, who is worshipped as the supreme god and divine guide in the Bhagavad Gita, through chanting, simple living, and bhakti yoga. So interesting that they keep making references to the Bhagavad Gita. So that was the book that Nate dreamed about when he had his ecstasy trip.
Weird.
And dream about Nathaniel. Yeah. So, and then Claire's like, yeah, you joined the Hare Krishna. So it's like
but I also think, did Ruth even believe that?
I think so.
Oh my God.
She did, because she was like, so I wrote, Claire's dry humor and sarcasm here, coupled with Nate and David's stifled giggles and loving glances at her from across the table, was like absolute perfection. But the look on Ruth's face when Claire says, she was like, oh my goodness, he did? Did he shave his head? And Claire's like, yeah, he shaved his head. Now can we talk about something else, please? So I definitely think Ruth was like super naive and gullible and definitely believed her. But this part, also connected to what we just said about Ruth, broke my heart, because when Claire said that, yeah, he shaved his head. Now can we talk about something else, please? The look on Ruth's face was so defeated. It was just like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, she was just trying to act like she's just fucking trying, man. I don't know. But
they're probably just as annoyed.
Right.
As we are.
Yeah. And I can't even talk because I know that I've been
I can see you saying the same thing to your mom.
Oh, I would for sure. But
yeah.
Anyway. So
yeah, definitely.
Nate jumps in and changes the subject by asking Claire if she would like to go up to Seattle with him. And
I thought that was so sweet.
So sweet. Claire's super excited, and Ruth agrees to let her go, citing that she is tired of being the architect of this family, and it's high time that they drew their own blueprints.
I'm so fucking done with these damn blueprints. I was like, are you kidding me? How many times did she say, if I would have been doing a drinking game for every time she said blueprints, I wouldn't have been able to finish the episode.
For sure. I think everybody's getting really annoyed about the blueprints. So she walks out of the kitchen, and David asks Nate and Claire, does anyone know what the fuck she's talking about anymore? So I also love, though, that David said fuck there, because he never swears and he's always so proper. He's just like, what the fuck is she talking about? But that was super funny. So then we see Nate at Brenda's house as they're getting ready for bed together in the bathroom, and Nate is flossing his teeth while Brenda is peeing.
I had to point out the comfortable nature of the use of the toilet and flossing at the same time. I'm not sure how I actually feel about it. I really don't know. Would I do something like that? Possibly. But then would it gross me out at another time? Possibly.
Oh, do you not like pee in front of Rob while he's brushing his teeth or something?
We almost have like separate bathrooms.
Oh.
But I'm not opposed to doing that. Like I've absolutely done it before.
You guys always had two bathrooms since you've been together?
No. So I think if I was the peer, I wouldn't think it was so gross.
Well, especially if it was you or I, because we sit down when we pee. But when there's a long stream of fucking thick, dehydrated male piss sloshing around in the toilet right next to me when I'm fucking brushing my teeth, oh my God, it's disgusting. Anyway,
Yeah.
And it like the smell like gets in your mouth like oh
Going at it in his teeth.
Yeah, he was. There was like no. I actually wondered for a second if she was pooping because she was
It's taken so long, and she pulled out the magazine.
Yeah. Anyway, Nate tells Brenda,
which would be even worse. I don't know.
That would be a little too far. But Nate tells Brenda that he's going to Seattle to get Mr. Mossback and that he's bringing Claire with him. And she says, sounds like fun. Totally unbothered, which why should she be, honestly? And Nate asks her if she doesn't mind that he didn't ask her. She says, no, not at all. And Nate asks, are you sure? And Brenda says, well, still sitting on the toilet, Nate, I'm trying to read, and you know I hate it when you floss in front of me. Which is hilarious because he was in there first, and she's the one going to the bathroom while he is clearly cleaning his teeth. So honestly,
I can't even handle that whole thing. I feel like that was a sarcastic.
Do you think she was just fucking with him on purpose? Like,
I think so.
Seeing how mean she could be.
Yes.
Probably.
I think I think that's exactly what's happening because that statement did not make sense to me.
Yeah, it was just beyond, like, she was just being a bitch. So then when they're getting into bed, Nate asks again if it's weird that he didn't ask her to go to Seattle with him. And she says, no, why would it be? They go back and forth, and Brenda tells him that she thinks it's good for him to spend time with Claire. And they eventually say goodnight and turn away from each other in the bed, which I thought was kind of notable. Like, instead of cuddling or even just like facing each other, it was like goodnight.
Might as well put a brick wall right in between it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was having this feeling of Nate having some resentment for Brenda for not being sad. Okay. And then spoiler alert, I think this is why in this episode he ends up cheating on her. But now that I've watched the rest of the episode, I don't know if I actually believe that fully.
Yeah.
Because I wrote this at the time. But he is feeling like what we've probably felt in the past.
Like insecure.
Yes.
Like, why don't you care? Why don't you want me to ask you? Like, why is it bothering you?
And you know what else I want to point out here? I don't think that Brenda actually cares, but I think she is
intentionally caring less.
Yes. And Rob and I were just talking about this at therapy. Him and I are very opposite on a spectrum of like, we're both neurodivergent, but we're like opposites on there. And I'm an over functioner and he's an under functioner by nature. Okay, but when you put an over functioner with an under functioner, the over functioner overfunctions even more and the under functioner underfunctions even more. It's like insane. And I'm like seeing a little bit of that right here with the way that Brenda is treating Nate.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. It's like what do they call, like the chase kind of, like intentionally.
Yes.
But like not in like the good way that sometimes can be.
Yes.
Like
mine and Rob's the functioning part. I think that's unintentional. I think it's subconscious. Yeah. And it might be subconscious for Brenda too right now.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to boil down to see
like
what
she's being really avoidant and he's being really insecure.
And they just they
multiply each
yes
other.
in this scenario.
For sure. Okay, so on the plane to Seattle, Claire is looking at a magazine or something and comments that Sleater Kinney is playing in Seattle that night. So Sleater Kinney is a feminist punk band formed in 1994 in Olympia, Washington, emerging from the Riot Girl movement, which was a wave of feminist activism that used music, zines, and DIY culture to confront sexism and empower young women, which I obviously looked that up so I could say what that was. But I think that's so cool. And I didn't really know anything about that. And literally like DIY culture, like they would, I don't know as enough about that at all to speak about it, but it sounds like they would do kind of like arts and crafts type shit to kind of like push their agenda of like feminism, which is
I'm gonna have to look all this stuff up. This sounds amazing.
Yes, it really does. We should bring it back. Riot Girl Movement 2025. Project Riot Girl 2025.
I'm so down. Can we riot from the couch?
Yes.
Okay.
Arts and crafts on the couch. Okay, so I love that they use little references like this to build the characters. That makes me love Claire even more, that she's into this shit. And Nate and Claire chat and bond on the plane, and he shares with her that he also loves Sleater Kinney, which is amazing.
Even more. Oh, yes, I love that.
Yep.
Now knowing more of the context behind it.
Yeah. And they have a little moment of bickering, but get over it quickly because Claire believes that Nate doesn't have any ulterior motives of bringing her on the trip. Like, he's not trying to take care of her or anything.
I think he noticed that she needed a change of scenery.
Me too.
But I don't think it was in the I'm the big brother and I'm going to save you kind of a thing. I think he genuinely just wanted...
I think he was kind of lonely too and wasn't getting
Probably.
shit from Brenda. Not like he's trying to get shit from Claire, but just connection, you know? Like, I want to go on this trip with someone who's actually going to want to hang out with me and talk to me and not act like I'm annoying or whatever.
Yeah, like I'm too much. I can relate to that.
Nate is so, like, not too much. I mean, I guess to Brenda, he is kind of being that way because
right
she's
now, but he's
making
not
him.
usually.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's their relationship.
It was a move on his end, I think, but not what it
wasn't
a move
what
that
Claire
was going to
thinks.
piss her off. So yeah, they were fine with it.
So this exact part where Nate is about to fall asleep and then, oh my God.
Yeah, I didn't know what you were
anything?
talking. I don't know what you're talking about here.
Okay.
If you are, then we can take it out.
So in this part, he falls asleep, I think, in the airplane. Does he take a nap on the airplane?
I don't know. I didn't know when I went back and put your notes in.
Then stares out the and then stares out the plane window. The part where Nate is about to fall asleep and then stares out the plane window and then this big flash of light and then onto the window of the airplane. This part was when I thought in like 10 episodes Nate was going to wake up back there and all of the 10 episodes would have just been a dream. So I remember thinking that...
Like at what point?
I thought that immediately when I first saw it in this part.
But like at what point was he going to come back?
I can't remember.
Or whatever. Okay.
Maybe it'll be interesting to see, like maybe at the end of the season or something, or like the season finale. And clearly I still don't know, but I'm thinking that's less likely to happen since you're looking at me like that. But
I mean,
I was like very into foreshadowing and stuff like that the first time that I watched it. And I was like, this would make a good storyline that's going to piss off a lot of people. Because I hate that. Oh, it was all a dream.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah, and they do that kind of a lot in the show.
Uh-huh.
I don't think they do it that long, like over multiple episodes, though. But, like, I get what you're getting at.
Yeah. I forgot that part. And then I love this Claire and Nate conversation. Get over yourself for 1 minute and let me be your friend. And
your brother.
And your brother. Because it's a both and. You can be both. And then Claire saying, but you guys did it a few times, though, right?
Because she was asking about Lisa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because he was saying, Lisa's different.
Yeah. She's just a friend. She's like, did you guys bang or whatever? So because she asked where they were going to be staying, and Nate tells her that they're staying at his friend Lisa's. And then
let's be real, Lisa is different.
Oh yeah, she is. Watching it this time around, it's interesting because I'm trying to figure out how I feel about her. I don't think I had I think I definitely felt bad for her the first time that I watched it because I could probably really identify with like just she comes off as pretty desperate and pretty like insecure, and I feel like I felt that in a lot of relationships in the past. So I felt bad for her because I could feel that, like, relate to those feelings. But there's so much more to look at now that we're older and nuances and everything. So it's just interesting. But Claire asked if she was an old girlfriend, and he says no, they were strictly roommates and nothing more. And he says she is not so easy to categorize. So,
which I agree with.
Yes.
But usually that's a line that somebody says when they've fucked somebody and don't know how to categorize them.
Yeah. So she presses him on whether they slept together, and he says, we are not having that discussion. So obviously they have, and then they talk more about it later, but that was it for that part. So then Nate and Claire pull up to Lisa's house, and Lisa greets them both with a giant hug and is clearly excited to see both of them, even though she's never met Claire before. But also that house has got to cost like fucking several $1 million. There's like a gorgeous view of the Seattle skyline. It's like this old 1800s castle looking house on a hill. I'm like, these Trader Joe working asses ain't living in this house.
You think it was an inheritance thing,
or
possibly?
Maybe I was trying to rationalize it in my brain, like maybe it's like a duplex or something, or there's a lot of people living in there.
True, because it did seem small and crammed when you get inside.
Yeah, and it was like this giant thing. Let's go with that. They live in a little apartment in the house,
or even a fourplex or something.
Yeah. So in the next scene, we see Ruth sitting down at the dining room table dialing a phone number, and Hiram picks up the phone on the other end. And she tells him she's calling because she wanted to let him know that she's been drafting a new fucking blueprint for herself and that she wants him to know that she harbors no hard feelings against him. And she immediately gets pissed after he apparently asks her if she wants to get back together. She's like, no, I do not want to get back together. How presumptuous. You know something, Hiram? Fuck off. And he slams the phone down and scoffs. So hilarious.
I love that Hiram made it back into the season.
Oh, yeah. A reappearance.
Yes.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. I'm curious too now if his relationship that he left Ruth for is going well, because he didn't say he was like, it sounds like he maybe might not be with that person anymore. He was like, do you want to get back together?
Oh,
or
yeah.
ask, like, are you calling because you want to get back together or whatever?
Unless he was just genuinely curious and was taken or something.
Yeah. That could
Maybe they're both
well
presumptuous.
be. Yeah, maybe. So then we see her aggressively ironing and leaving a message for Amelia, who is the one that she went to the track with and lost $25,000. She tells her on her answer machine that she's open to renewing their friendship if she's interested. And I felt like that was sweet, but I didn't know that they had a falling out.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of insinuating, or maybe Ruth just hasn't talked to her or anything.
And maybe by renewing, she means just like, let's hang out again.
Yeah, like let's get together. So it seems sweet and genuine, though, but I would like to know more. That was one thing that didn't have a lot of context to it. But then the next thing is that she's on the phone with her sister, Sarah, who we'll get to meet more. But I am excited. Oh, I literally wrote that. I'm excited for more Sarah. She's great. Anyway, she's leaving a message again because Sarah didn't pick up. And we learn here when she's leaving the message that Ruth has been trying to contact her over the last several weeks and feels like Sarah doesn't ever want to talk to her again. After she hangs up on the phone from leaving a message to Sarah, she pulls out her notebook to cross off her name from the list of people that she had apparently made to contact and give this spiel about her foundation to. And after she crosses off Sarah's name, the only names remaining on the list are Nate, David, and Claire. And she kind of looks at the names like, ooh. And it's interesting because in the last episode or episode before that, Robbie was like, you need to call your children, whatever. And he was trying to make her call from the plan when they had the phones in the hallway and she wouldn't call them. So obviously she's avoiding like talking to them. But it's also interesting to think about that and then think about how she's been bringing up these weird topics to them.
Yes, it seems like that's what she's doing low key.
Yeah. So it's like maybe it makes me honestly feel even more bad for her because I feel like maybe she's trying, but they just won't engage with her. So she can't, you know what I mean? But she just like can't figure out how to connect with them. That's actually so sad when you think about it because that is kind of what's happening. And
that's the only thing that kind of makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. That's why she looks so sad every time they snap at her and are like, can we talk about something else? She's like, I just want to build my foundation or whatever. So anyway, sad. In the next scene, we see Keith working at the scene of a standoff while also on the phone with Eddie, telling him he really needs him to pick Taylor up from school. And Eddie is telling him that he can't pick her up because he's in the middle of a shift. And Keith is asking if he can't find someone to cover for him because obviously Keith doesn't have that option right now. And when he hangs up, his partner says that he wishes the guy would just shoot her and get it over with because he has tickets to a Dodgers game that night. And Keith looks at him like disgustedly. It was so rude.
Okay, I thought for sure Keith was obviously going to call David. And what in the actual fuck to this white privileged cop? I wish the guy would just get it over with and shoot her already. Fuck you, and thank you for putting that in there because that is white privilege.
You put that in there.
Typically, no, I mean to the writers.
Oh, I was like,
thank you, writers, for putting this scene in there because I think it just beautifully depicts something that is actually still prevalent today, 20 years later, and not talked about quite enough.
It's like insensitive. It could even be like they're in a impoverished area. You know, he's also kind of talking shit about like less fortunate people in general.
Okay. Oh, that's
but what's the word? Economic status, whatever. Anyway, yeah, that guy was an ass, clearly.
I really like the way that you said that, though. Also, Keith called Eddie and David now. Both of them are working, but David's the only one who is going to drop what they're doing.
So I said the same thing. It's interesting that we're learning that Eddie is not there for Keith when it comes to Taylor. So we all know that David would drop anything and everything in a heartbeat for both of them, no questions asked. And it makes me feel way less bad for Eddie with all of this shit. And then I was like, oh, speak of the devil. Right after I unpause the scene, Keith calls David and asks him to help. And David, of course, says that he'd be happy to help. And Keith thanks him and tells him he'll pick up Taylor at his place later.
Let's just pause that for a second because I do want to throw this out there. Sometimes in a relationship, though, like David is doing this. It's not selfless. He's doing this to also look good for Keith.
Yeah. Leah cares about Keith and loves him. That's what you do for people you love.
That, and I think he also wants to look good for Keith.
Better than Eddie.
Correct. Although David doesn't know that Eddie, maybe he did know. I can't remember what the conversation was.
You can infer.
And David, exactly. That's very true. And Eddie probably feels already safe and secure in his relationship. So he's like, sorry, I'm not, which all I'm trying to do is point that out and recognize it. I'm not excusing the behavior to say, no, you're not important to me. Because that's exactly how Keith is receiving it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And honestly, too, this was another moment. Like, obviously, we want to root for David here because we know David better and we like David. But Eddie is EMT. So, like,
he probably, he can't just drop what he's doing all the time either.
Yeah. And like,
just to put some real context to it.
Right.
Right.
Like to look at it and think about, because I kind of, in my head, I'm watching, I'm just like, oh, fuck yeah, David's coming in to save the day. Fuck you, Eddie. But really, in reality, how do we know that Eddie wasn't like driving the ambulance?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. I didn't even think about that point too.
So anyway, back in Seattle, Claire, Nate, and Lisa are eating the tofu meatloaf that Lisa has made them all for dinner.
I thought Lisa looked like my mom.
When you say that, I can see it for sure. There's something about
the nose and the eyebrows and the eyes or something.
They do have a similar like bone structure or something like that. So Lisa is a hardcore vegan apparently, and Nate and Lisa talk about life at the co-op and Nate's new life as a funeral director, and Lisa tells him that she always knew he had a spiritual calling, and Claire laughs and says, yeah, right. I think that hurt Nate's feelings, though, when she did that.
When Claire left.
And it's also an interesting concept to think about because Nate struggles with feeling like no one really knows him. His lack
including
of
himself.
Yeah.
Including himself. Like, he doesn't even know himself.
Right. And then he's, like, slowly starting to feel like he's figuring it out. And then Claire doesn't even realize how damaging that can be to, like, scoff and laugh at that, which can kind of relate to that. Like when you feel, I'm sure we've all felt something in the past where someone accidentally like, or unintentionally diminishes something that you've been like working toward, or I don't know, imagine that you were.
I feel like that happens on a weekly basis. Those small little things.
Like, yeah. And so that can be, I mean, I don't know. Also,
let's make a vow to call each other if that ever happens. Call each other out on it.
Okay.
Because I think I've said, I remember one of my girlfriends just the other day was saying that. She's like, yeah, and I was having a bad day and somebody at work said X, Y, and Z. And in my head, I was like, well, it's not really that bad, but I can see how you took it that way. Maybe you should have said something. Because I would want to know. Like if something that I said like diminished what you were doing, I would want to be able to like not only correct the behavior, but build you up on that, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like do the opposite.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that hurt him. It's also interesting, because Nate
silently hurting him
with feeling like no one really knows him, his lack of connection, and Lisa seems to be someone that really connects with him and sees him for who he really is. So then again, Brenda was like that too in the beginning, although she tended to have more of like a well-rounded view of him, including his flaws, where Lisa seems like she's really romanticizing. She's
got rose-colored lenses on.
And Lisa tells him or asks Nate about Brenda, and Nate tells her that they're still together, but it gets kind of awkward and Nate kind of plays down their relationship, like plays down his relationship with Brenda to Lisa.
I had a couple thoughts. Obviously, Lisa's trying really hard here. It was almost uncomfortable. I was wondering if Claire could see that, the flirting. And when Lisa said that she was happy for Nate, I was feeling like she wasn't really happy for Nate. And that Nate was being so vague about Brenda was like you were saying, it was kind of, I didn't know if that was actually happening until later in the scene when Claire brings it up. And then it was like, okay, so I'm not crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of subtle because he didn't outright say, oh,
He didn't
yeah, it's nothing.
deny anything.
No, he was just like, yeah, it's okay. It is what it is, I think he said.
That is what he said.
It's like, what the fuck does that mean? But also, it kind of is what it is because what is it? I don't know. But
fuck if I know.
So then Lisa tells them that she got offered a job in LA and Nate asks if she's going to take it. And it really feels like she's fishing for him to tell her that he wants her to take it. And Claire asks to use the bathroom when she's gone. Lisa tells Nate that she really misses him. And Claire flushes the vegan meatloaf down the toilet.
Where it belongs.
So then in the next scene, we see Brenda with one of her female clients, Melissa, at her home. And Melissa is very complimentary of Brenda's work, which I'm glad to see Brenda getting validated, especially after that Trevor situation when her ex-boyfriend came over and kind of did the thing where he diminished her, like what we were just talking about. He shaded her by saying, oh, this girl at the health club is gifted. And then that's part of what sent Brenda spiraling, I feel like.
I think you're right.
And then, I was glad to see Melissa being genuinely like, you're so good at this, thank you. And then Brenda asks Melissa what she does for work. And without hesitation, Melissa tells Brenda that she's a prostitute. And Brenda's like, no shit, cool. And Melissa's like, eh. And Brenda offers her a cup of tea. So she's clearly intrigued and interested in hanging out with Melissa more. Then Melissa politely declines because she has to get to work.
After this, I thought it was so, I loved Brenda's reaction. I don't think that Brenda is thinking, ooh, that sounds like fun, I want to do it. I think she's thinking, this is really cool, I want to hear more about it. Not because I want to, yeah, okay. It's coming soon, obviously. We're setting the groundwork here. But I think that is so good to point out, though, this conversation.
Yeah.
For the groundwork in the next, next episode. I don't know.
More comes from this for sure.
Yeah. And I just love how open-minded she is about, I'm a huge fan of sex workers. I am not a sex worker, but I do think that it should be legalized.
Should be decriminalized.
Yeah.
So after Melissa leaves, Brenda's phone rings and it's Margaret telling her she needs to meet her at Tranquility Spa and that it's an emergency. And no matter how many times Brenda asks what happened, Margaret refuses to tell her.
I forgot about this scene.
Just says that she wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I absolutely fucking hate this. It reminds me of times in the past when my own family has manipulated me by using fear, and it's just so absolutely fucked. I hate it.
You probably were seeing black right now.
It was like, this has happened to me before, and it's so fucked. I hate it. And it's Margaret is that I do fucking love Margaret's. Margaret's laugh is just kills me. So I can't actually be mad at her, but if she was a human being in the real world, I would hate her. So Brenda arrives at Tranquility Spa and starts approaching the building when Margaret jumps out of the literal bushes and grabs her and tells her not to go in there. She drags her over to the parking lot and points out that Bernard's car is there. And she points out a pack of Virginia Slims on the dash and a scrunchie on the gear shift. She says, your father hasn't had enough hair to need a scrunchie since 1975.
I used to smoke Virginia Slims.
Dude, didn't Alex's mom smoke those? Somebody did.
Me.
Someone's mom, I mean. Like, how did we know they were a thing to get them?
I saw it in a movie one time, and so I would ask all of these people that bought us cigarettes.
What movie? God. I'm pretty sure Nancy smoked those.
No, she smoked Liggets.
Oh. And drink.
Or, I'm so sorry.
Windsor.
They were Dorels.
Oh.
My grandma smoked Liggets. We're not smokers anymore, but that was funny for me because I used to make my old ass uncle, who was like missing a tooth, walk into the gas station with quarters and buy me Virginia Slims.
That's hilarious. Good Lord. All right. So Brenda says, okay, so you think Dad is fucking somebody. And Margaret's like, bingo. And Brenda is immediately pissed.
Because this is not the emergency she thought it was.
Literally. She's like, oh my God, is that all this is? I thought you'd heard from the hospital that something happened to Billy. I'm like, yep, that right here is exactly what I'm talking about. For me, it was that I was afraid that something bad happened to my grandma. Like when somebody would call me or text me, I need you to call me.
And she knew that you thought it would be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's weaponizing the fear of you.
Yes, it's manipulating. It's so fucked. Anyway, so this was triggering for me, clearly. Margaret tells Brenda to not be so dramatic, which was triggering for you.
That was triggering for me. My whole life, I have been told I'm too loud, too much, too dramatic, too blah, 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 blah. Fuck you in the asshole. And I hate hearing that because, first of all, in this specific scene, I'm sorry. Who's being dramatic?
Literally. Margaret.
Uh-huh. And then second of all, I probably am usually being dramatic. I just feel a lot. I have a lot of feelings and emotions, and that's how my brain works. So it was a little frustrating. I think Brenda was not triggered by that as much.
Yeah. I feel like that was just something that didn't even faze her.
Because she knew that she wasn't.
Yes.
But I think for me, I heard that so much growing up that I was like...
It's still like an annoying thing to hear, especially in this context when, like you just said, Margaret is the one who's being dramatic and she's being...
It's gaslighting.
Hypocritical. Yeah. It's like, I can do this, but you can't.
Yeah.
So next we see David bringing Taylor a tray of milk and a snack while she sits on the Fisher's couch watching TV. And he tells her that he needs to go to work downstairs for a little while and asks if she has everything that she needs. And she asks for chocolate milk. And he tells her that they don't have any. She responds, I want some goddamn chocolate milk. And David replies, yes, well, I'm sorry, but we only have white milk. And Taylor goes
With
on.
that look on his face.
Don't you got any other cookies besides these? I don't like these kinds. These taste like shit. And David's like, okay, well then color in your coloring books and I'll check on you in a bit. Honestly, David is doing such a good job here thinking about her and getting her snacks and a coloring books. It's
and
so
staying
sweet.
calm.
Yeah, exactly. And Taylor again retorts that she doesn't like coloring books. She likes to draw. David tells her to draw then. And she holds up her coloring book and says, these are coloring books. You can't draw in coloring books because they already have the drawings in them. You can only color in coloring books. That's why they're called coloring books. David gives up and asks if she wants to watch TV. She says, okay. Which that was a funny part too because he literally is not even being fazed by her being so mean to him. And he's like, okay, do you want to watch TV? And she's like, all right, fine. And they just were like, fine. So he asks if she knows how to use the remote, and she asks if he thinks she's stupid. Bitch, I know how to use a remote. So David says, fine, knock yourself out, and walks out of the room. When he's gone, Taylor mumbles under her breath, dumbass cracker, which honestly, this was a pretty hilarious scene and very sweet, in my opinion, despite how mean she was being to him.
Okay, so this part was weird for me because it was like all of a sudden Taylor's got this flip switch on the interaction with David, because remember when David went over to the house and they were playing with, that's what it was. I was like, was it a dollhouse? I can't remember. And they were all like,
because Carla was there.
Oh God. I'm so glad I put this in there because that is so fucking true.
Yeah. Like she's just acting out because she's pissed because her mom ditched her.
And I wonder if she sees David as a safe person.
Yeah.
And that's why she's doing this, because she needs to get it out.
Yes, I'm literally gonna cry right now. That's actually probably exactly what she is doing, because you don't act like that around people unless they are your safe person, really.
Yeah, absolutely you don't. Like, that's exactly where my mind was going, and then hearing you say that is like, dang. And then I also have to point out she does have a point on the coloring versus the drawing.
That is true. Yes. Okay, so okay, I forgot I put this in here. Taylor reminds me of this meme thing I screenshotted because I saw it one time and it resonated, but I have it saved on my phone. I feel like it perfectly describes her. So the first quote is from The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and it says, I shall write it in my diary tonight. What? That a burnt child loves the fire. And the second quote is from Lauren Eden, who's an Australian poet, and it says, when you are not fed love on a silver spoon, you learn to lick it off of knives. Which isn't that so... Ooh, I like get chills looking at that, but I had that on my phone from when I was a teacher. It was like a reminder for me of like...
with the kids. Okay.
But that's literally Taylor, because that's why she's acting that way, because she's not been given love like she deserves, the stability, you know. I'm not saying that her mom doesn't love her, but you know what I mean. She hasn't been getting what she needs. And she's been burned. Her mom literally just disappeared. Like, her safe person has just been gone for weeks on end. And now her phone's disconnected. If that happened to me when I was a kid, if my mom all of a sudden just disappeared and her phone was disconnected, that's traumatizing.
We have friends that have had that happen.
Yes. That's traumatizing as fuck. Like, poor girl. So she has been burned, and she is, like, you learn to lick it off of knives. Like, that means that you learn to be mean to people so they pay attention to you.
Yes. We tell the girls to, specifically Willa being in kindergarten, and unfortunately there are bullies in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
And not quite to the extent, but I'm not diminishing the fact that it hurts people's feelings.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I tell
Especially
them,
girls.
yes, I always tell Wills too, is sometimes hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
If that's all that they know. So just be mindful if somebody on the bus is being an asshole, they might not have a very good home. Also, the hurt could be at all different levels. It doesn't have to be a family that doesn't love them.
Mm-hmm. Right. You
It
can
could
love
be a
somebody and
hurt.
still not be able to give them what they need,
Yes.
especially kids.
Yes.
So sad. Super sad. So Nate and Claire are going through the fast food drive-through Chubby's. We learned they both hated...
Which makes me so hungry right now.
Yeah, that does sound good. They both hated Lisa's vegan meatloaf.
Fuck that shit.
And Claire asked Nate why he was being so vague about his relationship with Brenda when Lisa had asked. And Nate tells her he didn't want to hurt her feelings. So Claire calls him out that he definitely slept with her. And Nate admits that they had occasional sex together, but they were only friends and nothing more. And Claire asks if Lisa is aware of that. And Nate opens up more and tells her that they only had sex 5 to 6 times tops, and each time he was very open with her about what it did and did not mean. And Claire's like, yeah, sure, well, she's got it bad for you.
Okay, so Nate says in this scene, I was always honest with Lisa about the sex or whatever, except he literally just admitted to lying to her about liking her meatless meatloaf.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's like, no, exactly. It's a perfect parallel for what that actually means in reality. Like, okay, so you're being honest with her. No, you're telling her what she wants to hear.
Yep, that's not honesty.
No.
So that was just really frustrating, and I feel like is done a lot in relationships, and it does so much more damage than people understand.
Yep.
First of all, you're gonna go fucking hungry if you don't tell them, okay, time out, I have to tell you a funny story. I am not very good in the kitchen. I could burn water. That's not a lie. I can bake cookies and like stuff really well. I don't know why. I made a lasagna for Rob. Okay, also PS, Rob is autistic. We just found out that he's on the spectrum. And this makes so much sense now when I tell this story. We had been dating for like less than 6 months, and I wanted to do dinner because Rob was always making dinner. He's so good at it. I'm like, I want to do something nice for him. So I make lasagna with zucchini instead of noodles.
I remember when that was a thing, when that was like a big trend.
Yeah, did I hop on that bandwagon or something?
I was at like like a spiralizer trend. I had a spiralizer.
Everything.
Yeah, it was like zucchini.
You want to? I make my
everything.
toothpaste with the zucchini, and so I'm making the zucchini with the lasagna, and it's fucking terrible. Like, it was lasagna soup because you want to dry the zucchini out before you put it in to bake it and like cook it all up there. And so we sat down to eat it. What's the first thing Rob says? This looks awful. Mind you, we have been dating for less than 6 months. Is that something that you would say to somebody after they just spent like 6? And I remember being like, are you going to try it at least? And so he tries it and he's like, this tastes awful. And so now I'm thinking, oh my
like
God, he's
Sheldon,
so black
except
and
for-
white.
No,
Of yeah, could you at least like smile when you say it or something?
hilarious.
Yeah,
Doesn't surprise me.
not at all. And now it all makes sense. But that's why.
But
And now I never
better
had to
than-
make another lasagna.
Yeah, exactly. Good thing. Then what if he would have been like, "This is delicious"?
This
He would
is
have
so
been fucking
good.
spiralizing your zucchinis to this day.
I could have just put a soup in the crock pot. Okay.
So next up, we have what is probably the hardest scene to watch in the whole episode.
Oh
for
my
a lot
God.
of
Yes, it
people.
was.
When Nate goes to order at the drive-thru, he comments that he smells rotten eggs, and he's having deja vu. And then he starts slurring his speech and stuttering when he's trying to say his order.
This
And
was so great.
yeah,
acting.
It was, and it was really disturbing. And he gets out of the van and throws up. So he basically kind of had like a seizure while he was ordering, or like a stroke. And Claire is obviously shocked and scared, and he asks Claire to drive and tells her that he's going to get some air and make a phone call. So he gets out of the van and calls the doctor's office and tells them that he's having an emergency. But it was just really that I feel like that explanation did not really do the scene justice, but I don't know how to explain it better. He was like, it's just you're watching this person have a freaking medical emergency up close and personal, like in your
She doesn't even know how severe this is either.
Not
and
at
the
all.
guy's still like, hello, do you want a large or a medium? And she's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
That was so awkward. Yeah, I think I was feeling all the same things. Like, he's got to tell Claire what's going on. He has to. This is serious. Super uncomfortable.
So, yeah, that was sad. Back at the Tranquility Spa, Brenda is sitting in Margaret's car with her as she stakes out the spa and watches every woman that comes out.
Judging. They're judging to see. Oh, that can't be her.
Margaret's commenting about one woman when she doesn't get into his car. She says, I knew it. Byrne couldn't get anyone that good looking to jump his saggy ass. And then they both crack up laughing at this, which was honestly pretty endearing, like, and relatable.
I love that Brenda's still there.
Yeah.
I'd have taken my ass home.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Like, they obviously, and spoiler alert, this scene does not end well for them, but I love that just seeing, it's nice to be able to relate to other people's dysfunction sometimes. When
Misery loves
like,
company.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like finding the, not good, but finding the funny shit in a not funny situation. You know what I mean?
Do you know what this reminds me of right here?
Huh?
So Brenda and Margaret sitting in the car, and then they have that moment of like, Brenda's obviously annoyed that she's there, but she's going along with it to please her mother, and then she does find a funny moment in the thing, and then genuinely laughs. It reminds me of like Brenda being the mom and Margaret being the toddler or something. Like they're like, Mom, come watch my Guitar Hero for the 97th time, and then you're like, oh my God, okay, I'm watching. And then something funny happens, and you're like genuinely having this connection or whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of that. Brenda being the adult.
Yeah. She definitely is being more of the adult in this.
Yes.
The more rational person, at least. But I love that they both were cracking up laughing. And I said again, I just love Joanna Cassidy's laugh. But Brenda tells Margaret that she thought that her and Bernard had an agreement, aka that they have an open marriage. And Margaret says that they do. But this time he broke one of the rules by not telling her first. The rule is if you step outside the holy bounds, you have to tell your wife first. So that way she can line up some young hottie of her own. And then she starts cracking up again. They both do. And Brenda admits that that does sound fair and asks if they have any other rules. She says she's genuinely curious. Margaret tells her some of the rules, which are also hilarious when she's telling them. But then Brenda asks if they have a rule about not fucking people in front of their kids. Yikes. So she references seeing Margaret fucking a guy with a hairy back in the hot tub. And Margaret, presumably when she was a kid. And Margaret tells her that her father was there and there was no penetration. And Brenda says, yeah, I bet that wasn't your choice. So very messy. So that's it. It's also a perfect example of how those moments in dysfunctional families, when you're laughing lightheartedly, they go south real fast. And that's why it's dysfunction.
Yes, that is a really good theme of this scene right here. I do agree. The rules are rules. Boundaries are boundaries in any E&M relationship. You can't have a successful E&M relationship if you don't have the rules and stick to them. But I feel like Margaret having this stakeout is also somehow against their rules. I don't know their rules, though. But I also do love that they're having this conversation. I thought it was...
It's like she's crossing a boundary back. Like he crossed a boundary and then she's crossing a boundary because he crossed it. So like double crossing boundaries, it's like two wrongs doesn't make it right.
That's not where I thought you were going. Listen to this. I feel like Brenda's also crossing a boundary of getting all the information on this E&M relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a way,
no.
She could have.
And maybe Bernard doesn't care, but maybe he does.
But I feel like that's Brenda's way of
getting more intel on them so she can manipulate them.
Just like feeling okay with being there. Like I want to get some, if I'm going to be here, I got to get something out of it.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so next we see David in the prep room talking to Rico, who's apparently upset with him for leaving a couple hours early to pick up Taylor because that means Rico has to stay late. So it's interesting to put the pieces together that David also had repercussions for leaving work, just like Eddie
I thought that was
did.
weird.
But David did it anyway, so it's
good pointing.
Yeah.
Good to point that out.
Yeah. So like they both probably would have had repercussions, obviously, because Eddie didn't do it, but David, he's getting in trouble at work too, but he still did it. He put Taylor above and Keith above his job, which sometimes, I mean, it's not always something that you obviously, like, you never hope that something like that will happen, but you also have to know that your partner in life will do that for you in an emergency.
True.
You know?
Which this really was.
Yeah. Like, she couldn't just be left there. So anyway, David asks Rico if he's just pissed because they wouldn't give him the loan, and Rico responds that he doesn't want to be taken advantage of by his employers. When it's convenient, we're like family, but in a pinch, I'm just an employee. Honestly, I'm not mad once again, about Rico standing up for himself. And I've been going through my own shit with similar stuff, though, at work, like you know of. So there's that to connect it to. But right after Rico says that, though, he says, "Hey, little lady," which I also loved that, how he just was so, I don't know, like read the room immediately, because we see that Taylor has come downstairs to find David as they're working on a dead body.
Honestly, it's so...
That guy dead?
Yeah, literally what she says. And it's interesting to me because I don't think I would have... We're watching this show that it's so like natural to talk. Yes. Yeah. I didn't even think twice about Taylor being there and
right.
accidentally...
I wasn't thinking about that at all either, of being a
But yes, that would be traumatizing.
thing. Yeah.
Hopefully he's dead.
Yes. So David escorts her out of the prep room and sits down with her on the basement steps to talk with her. And she says, "That man was totally dead." And David says, "Yes, that man was totally dead." And Taylor asks if they killed him. And David explains to her that he died of natural causes. And Taylor tells David that her friend told her that everyone's going to die. And David tells her that's true, but not for a very, very long time. And Taylor tells David that her mom said her dad is good as dead as far as she's concerned. And
that's good context.
And David very gently tells her that that's her way of expressing anger at him for not being around. Taylor then tells David that her mom sometimes says she wishes she was dead. Like her mom wishes her mom was dead. And David again pauses, but explains that that's just something that people say when they're upset. But like, what the fuck, Carla? Don't say that shit in front of your kid. Like, that's just so frustrating to hear.
Also adding more context to Taylor's hurt.
Exactly, and her trauma. And Taylor asks if the dead man had any kids and tells David that she doesn't want to die. And David tells her that he doesn't either, and gently pats her on the shoulder. And they share a look of like, well, shit. And it was a really sweet bonding moment for them, and David handled it perfectly, I think.
I do too. I thought the conversation was very well worded. It was very not lying and not, oh, birds and the bees bullshit.
Yeah.
Like he gave her a mature answer.
And live forever in heaven.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was so
straightforward but gentle.
Which she probably, I don't think people understand how much kids appreciate being talked to.
Yeah.
In a way like that. There's a good way to finesse it. Yeah.
Right. Like, obviously you don't need to tell her all that she
gory
could die
things.
Any day. You know what I mean? But like, you shouldn't lie. I don't know. I think he did really well. So in the next scene, we see Nate and Claire walking out of the pharmacy to pick up Nate's anti-seizure medication, and he's explaining to her about his A.V.M. and what it is. And he tells her that David knows, but he doesn't want Mom to know, and that it's no big deal. Claire's super worried about him, and Nate plays it off like it's nothing, and she doesn't believe him. And he asks her to not tell David about his seizure that he had. So even though David knows, he doesn't want David
him to know how serious it is. Why does this is just so fucking irritating for me that he doesn't want anyone to know about his A.V.M. That's just odd to me because, I mean, you know me. That's not something that I would keep a secret.
No.
So I can't understand.
I think he doesn't want to accept it. Like, once he tells people that
it's like, real then?
Yeah. Like, he can't go back.
God, that's such a foreign way of thinking. I just don't understand it, which clearly it is a way people think.
I think, honestly, it's especially for him, too, because he's a man and he avoids conflict and he avoids anything like bad. Like he didn't want to tell Lisa he didn't like her meatloaf. Like he doesn't like any kind of confrontation that's like negative. If it's somebody that he cares about, which goes to his empathetic side because he loves everyone. He doesn't ever want to hurt anybody. Because when it's somebody he doesn't love and like he's standing up for somebody that he does love, like with the Kroner situation and everything, then he will be mean and confrontational. But he doesn't want to like upset anyone that he cares about, I feel like, maybe. And there's also an element of him just not wanting to accept it himself. I don't know. But yeah, it is really weird to think about that, especially to wait so long before he even told David or like any one person. I can see maybe.
And he wasn't going to tell Claire until he had this
he would never would have. I mean,
and I don't even think he wanted to then.
No, I don't. He was definitely playing it down. But there's, like, I can see not wanting to tell everyone, like, not want to broadcast it to the whole world. But usually, I mean, I think it's really intense with him because he didn't tell one single soul for so long.
And Brenda still doesn't know.
No, his partner. Yeah, it's.
Oh, and then the end of this episode pisses me off then.
So back at the Tranquility Spa with Margaret and Brenda, Brenda shares with Margaret that she has a client that is a prostitute. And Margaret asks if that's supposed to shock her. And Brenda tells her not everything is about her and that she's a narcissist. And Margaret tells her that just because her parents are shrinks doesn't mean she knows anything about psychology.
That irritated the shit out of me.
Yes. And Brenda tells her that just because she's a shrink doesn't mean she's not out of her fucking mind.
Loved it.
Yes. And then a woman comes out of the spa and walks up to Bernard's vehicle. So Margaret gets out of the car to talk to her, and Brenda tries to stop her, but Margaret assures her she just needs to personalize the experience and humanize the situation. So she walks up to the car and introduces herself and tells the woman, I just want you to know it's okay with me. And the woman is like, yeah, I'd love to chat, but I've got to go meet Bern for lunch. And Margaret laughs. She literally like throws her head back and then like attacks
her hair went
woman.
like this.
Yes. She's like, wah, and like reaches in the car. So the woman speeds off and Margaret yells, I hope you like herpes, which I feel like immediately as soon as that came out of her mouth, she realized that wasn't the dig she thought it was. She's basically just yelling, I have herpes, which there's nothing wrong with having herpes, but she backfired. It wasn't what she was trying to do. So she gets back in the car with Brenda and says, you know, I thought she'd be more evolved. Brenda freaks out and is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You just attacked her. Margaret's like, whatever, are you hungry? And Brenda's like, hold up, why the fuck am I here? It's because you needed a fucking audience, she says to Margaret. And then she goes on to tell Margaret that she always needs her kids to validate her because she can't do it for herself, which was an interesting insight.
Wow, that is so deep.
Especially coming from her for her mom. Like, that would be really hard to deal with that.
That, I'm seeing similarities, very micro way in relationships, how that could be manifested. I can see that a lot. And mostly in a lot of women who don't feel validated enough in their relationships and will act out in little ways, not nearly to this level. But I'm just curious because I can think of ways that I've done this, not to this extent, but hearing Brenda say it out loud, you just needed an audience. You needed your kids to validate you because you don't get it enough. I can totally see that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think she's spot on.
Absolutely.
Like, I think that's for sure what she's doing.
I also loved the Margaret saying, I'm not angry. Like, bitch, yes, you are. Because she was trying to say, I'm not angry. I'm just going to go over there and talk.
Yeah, for sure. She's so delusional. She doesn't even realize how, like, stupid she's sounding because she's doing the opposite of what she's saying or acting the opposite.
But she's also, God, this is so crazy because I can feel like I could do something exactly like Margaret did 25 years ago. I would never do that today.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single person in this world that
Reminds
could.
me of the shake at Hardee's. Kind of. Yeah. Like, same vein, you know?
Yep. But when you're acting this way, you're literally like seeing red and black. Like you don't even know what's going on. And that's exactly how Margaret is being right now.
For sure.
But how is she not grown out of this? You know? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. That is a good point. So,
because you would never, I can't see you doing that now.
Not to another woman, no, but to a guy. Like, angrily. Like, I could see red and...
Okay, that's even a better point. Why aren't we fucking mad at Bernie?
Yeah.
Where's his little saggy ass?
Yeah.
Bring him over here.
Literally.
God.
So Margaret tells Brenda not to judge her and basically tells her she's not special just because her and Nate have been together for 8 months. And Brenda tells her she's just jealous because she hasn't allowed her to totally destroy her life like she has everybody else's. Margaret tells Brenda that she doesn't have a life because she spent her whole life tending to Billy, being his nursemaid, to avoid having any emotional life of her own. And now that he's been put away, she has to face her own demons, and she has a lot of them. She said, and honey, they're legion, which I had to look up what that means. I've never heard that term before, but apparently it means there's a lot. So then Brenda slaps her in the face, literally slaps Margaret across the face, and Margaret tells her to get out of her car. And Brenda says she would be happy to. And she gets out and walks away, leaving the door open to boot, which was a power move. But then Margaret starts to cry as she walks away. It's a really intense scene. This slap was surprising. I wasn't really expecting that.
But yes, it was a lot.
Yeah, kind of deserved, though. I mean, I think so. I don't know. That was a lot. Okay, this was an important part here. I was actually thinking about this because I was thinking about a note that you had later on that we'll get to. But this part where Margaret tells Brenda that she doesn't have a life because she spent her whole life tending to Billy to avoid having any emotional life of her own. Just remember that I pointed that out. And
Okay.
I'll go back to that. But okay, so then back at the Fishers, David and Ruth are sitting down to dinner with Taylor, and Taylor tries to go eat in the living room in front of the TV, but Ruth gently tells her to come back to the table. And Ruth is so good at talking to her too. And Taylor asks Ruth if she knows that David used to be her Uncle Keith's boyfriend, and that sometimes her mom calls her Uncle Keith a punk-ass fudge packer because he likes men instead of women. And I guess that makes you a punk-ass fudge packer too then, don't it? She says to David. Then David tells her they don't use those kinds of words. And Taylor asks why. And Ruth says because they're hateful words. And Taylor asks what words they do use. And I love how she's just like genuinely curious. Like, well, what do you call it then? Like she didn't know. David says,
she's innocent.
Yeah. Homosexual. She does. Yeah, she definitely wasn't saying that to be mean. But she did think it was funny. But she didn't know what it meant. So I remember definitely saying shit when I was a kid.
And then your parents being like,
yes.
Don't say that one.
Yes. I'm pretty sure.
I think queer was one of them.
Redneck for me. I know my mom used to say redneck, and I said redneck at school one time, and I got in trouble. I didn't fucking know what it meant. My mom said it. Anyway.
I think queer was one of them, but it's now becoming like the best term to use.
Is the PC term, but yeah, that used to.
I would rather use queer than homosexual.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like homosexual is weird.
Yeah, that sounds weird. But anyway, David says homosexual
with a smile on his face.
Yeah. And Taylor accepts this, and it's honestly a perfect depiction of how to correct her. No yelling necessary. She's just a kid.
Good point.
She doesn't know any better. And she goes on to talk about Eddie and how she doesn't like him because he talks to her like she's stupid and looks at himself in the mirror a lot.
I love that pointing out because we were just talking about how well David was doing.
Yes, yeah. And so she is really like giving, and David even smiles a little bit here.
His ears perk up when he says it.
So Ruth says, well, it's true. Some people just don't know how to talk to children. And Taylor says, tell me about it. And David looks at Ruth really appreciatively. I think that he's really happy that she's supporting him and helping him with Taylor. And he didn't expect her to be so good at it, it feels like. Like, I feel like he was kind of apprehensive about the situation. But then Ruth was just being so good with Taylor that he was like, like relieved in this moment. And when Ruth gets up from the table, Taylor shows David her chewed up food in her mouth, and David chuckles at that, and then Taylor chuckles back. So it was really cute. At first I was scared. I'm like, oh, David's going to be grossed out, but he giggled. I know. It would have annoyed me, honestly. It would have been like, don't. But David liked it.
Jesus.
So back at Lisa's house, Claire walks in the kitchen to find Lisa on the floor yelling at aunts, asking them to leave her house.
Oh, my God.
And Lisa was telling Claire, just out of the blue, I'm not in love with Nate, if that's what you're thinking, but I used to be. And she says she used to think that one day he would realize that she was the one for him, but he never has. And then she asks Claire if she thinks he ever will. And so clearly she's still in love with him, but Claire says she isn't the person to ask. And she's only just starting to get to know him herself. And Lisa tells her that he's a heartbreaker and she must think that she's so stupid. And Claire tells her that she doesn't. And Lisa asks if she has a boyfriend. And Claire says, not anymore. And then Lisa tells her that she's better off, trust me. And then she's like, fucking ants. So I said, true that to the you're better off without a boyfriend. But
yeah, that is good advice. How sad. Lisa is so...
She is all over the place, exactly like what you put. She's all over the place and just seems so fucking desperate. It is sad. It's I don't say this like meanly, but it's pathetic.
Yes. The aunt situation I felt was also like her way of letting out her anger. It just seemed so odd.
She was being manic almost.
Yes.
Like I'm freaking out. I don't know.
I need to distract myself and get...
Yeah. Just being weird.
Who the fuck yells at ants?
Yeah, I don't know. That was weird. She's a weirdo. So meanwhile, Nate's outside on the porch with $1 million view of the Seattle skyline, calling Brenda to ask how she's doing. Brenda mentions the situation with her mom, but tells Nate that she doesn't want to talk about it. And she asks him how it's going with Claire and if everything's okay. And Nate tells her it's all good and he'll be home the next day. And Brenda tells him that she's going to get in the bath and he tells her he misses her. She says she misses him too, kind of reluctantly, and then hangs up and then she starts crying. But before we get into the fact that she was crying, I just realized that Nate intentionally never told Brenda that they were staying with Lisa. Like she has no idea that they're staying at Lisa's because she just asked like, how's Claire? Right? Like, I don't think, and he never said, at least not in front of us, for us to know that, because Brenda would be smart enough to know. She knows
Lisa.
Nate. She knows he's a hornball. She knows, okay, you're going to stay at Lisa's house. You fucked her.
She would have been able to tell everything from just a look in his eye.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know what's going on in Brenda's head right now. Her crying after talking to Nate.
That's the note that I was talking about earlier. I feel like she's crying because she's so hurt from that interaction with Margaret. And that Margaret said that about her
and Billy.
And that she's just like, I don't know. I feel like I had a better thought in my head earlier. I'm not really getting exactly to it, but I feel like that is why she's so literally to the point of tears right now, because that was it made her so distraught to go through that, those cruel, hard truths that.
Well, it's certainly something she's thrown around in her own head.
Yes. That's why I was just going to say that. Like, Margaret, even though she was being a bitch, honestly, some of the shit she said was true, though. Like, about Brenda spending her whole life taking care of Billy so she didn't have to deal with any of her own emotions. I think that is real. Like, I think that is actually kind of true for Brenda.
It's a hard pill to swallow, too.
Yeah. It's like a hard truth that she's coming to terms with. And I think it's, like, making her upset because she's also, coupled with the fact that she's been so upset about in these recent episodes, especially with Trevor and everything, about not having done anything big and profound with her life.
It's a theme.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel
and
bad.
How good does it feel to just cry the fuck out in the bathtub?
Yeah, crying
sometimes
feels good, for sure. So that I literally wrote that. She's smoking a joint in the bathtub. It looks heavenly. And then she hears a knock on the door, and it's the dude from the bar the other night. And they start making out.
I was so confused.
Yeah, so was I.
Okay, yes, as I'm writing this, who the fuck is this? The dude from the restaurant bar? Okay, this has to be a fucking dream. Oh, totally was.
Yeah, so.
Which is interesting that I wrote that also about Nate.
Oh, yeah.
In the dream. I don't
know.
That's super
real,
interesting,
though.
but yes.
Or not real, but it was really a dream. But so obviously they're showing us that Brenda's mind is elsewhere and not thinking about really Nate. She's thinking about fucking other dudes or fantasizing about it, which is fine, but I feel like it has meaning in this context.
I think that Brenda is trying to escape her emotions again by creating chaos in her dream of cheating on Nate.
Yeah, she's definitely self-sabotaging. Sad. Then at the Fishers, Keith has come to pick up Taylor, and he's standing with David watching her sleep on the couch. And he asks David if she gave him a hard time, and David lies and says not really, which was sweet. So he tells Keith that she's a great kid and it was no problem. And Keith and David say goodnight. But that is true. She is a great kid. And I love that.
And she really didn't.
No, she didn't do anything that bad, but she did give him a hard time. I mean, she called him
a punk ass.
But even before that, he's just like, this tastes like shit. And whatever else she said about I want my goddamn chocolate milk, whatever. Anyway, I love that David can see that she is a good kid, and she is a good kid. And I feel like they're insinuating that Eddie probably wouldn't have that ability to be so patient with her. I don't know. We don't know that for sure, but she says that he talks to her like she's stupid. So
Yeah.
then Nate is laying on the bed at Lisa's, and she walks in to bring him an extra quilt, and she asks him if he's okay, and he says that he's fine, but she looks at him and says, "You can't fool me, Nate. I know you too well."
Ugh, I'm so uncomfortable. Lisa is trying so hard right now. He didn't need an extra quilt. I've pulled that line before, and it works. Let me just tell you. That's how I ended up with 4 kids. That was her last try.
And it's all that she needed, honestly. I mean, sadly, it shouldn't have. Well, whatever. I won't say anything more at this point. But Nate breaks down crying when she pushes and says, "I know you too well." And he's in her lap, and Lisa is just comforting him and rubbing his back.
Which is probably what he needed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
From Claire.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we know what happens next.
Yeah, we don't, not for sure. Like, if you were watching this for the first time, though, you might not put the pieces together. Because I remember when I watched it for the first time, I didn't know, because they don't
That's a good point.
come out and tell you. So we just won't say. You probably put it together at this point, but we'll talk about it when we get to the repercussions of it, I guess, more maybe. But the next morning, Nate and Claire are getting ready to leave. Maybe we should just talk about it. I don't know.
I think so, because
Nate and Claire they're getting ready to leave, and Nate asks Lisa if she's seen his flannel shirt that he's left there, and she tells him that she thinks it got donated, and then he finds it right away. So obviously she was trying to say it got donated, so he stopped looking for it so she could keep it. And then
I didn't think that. That's a good point.
Yeah, and Lisa's like, "Oh, I love that shirt. It's so Nate." And then Nate realizes, and then he gives the shirt to her. He's like, "No, keep it, keep it." She's like, "It's your shirt. What would I want with it?" He's like, "Just keep it, okay?" But no, she definitely was like trying to steal it. Or not steal it, but not let him find it.
Yeah. Okay, that is so true. I didn't even, that went right over my head. I'll get some of these subliminal messages.
They said their goodbyes, and then they left. And they had a moment where they zoomed in on Lisa's face as they walked out the door, and she was like closing the door behind them and just kind of closed her eyes. Like, she really does got it bad for Nate.
Yeah, Claire definitely knows they fucked. You can see it in her eyes.
So they fucked. That's what we were trying to beat around the bush about, but they obviously
did a little something.
Lisa fucked after she was comforting him, but you don't see it. You find out later for sure. So a lot of people probably assumed, but you wouldn't know for sure. Because they don't show them kissing or anything. They just show him crying and her rubbing his back. So it's like, and then, you know what I mean? But anyway, okay. So at the Fishers, David and Ruth are talking in the kitchen. And Ruth asks when Keith came to pick up Taylor. And David tells her that it was 1:30 a.m. And that Taylor had been asleep on the couch. And Ruth is like, "Oh." And David asks if there's something that she would like to say to him. And
Which is great.
Yeah, it was. It was very, I mean,
he
typically.
Could tell.
Typically, he wouldn't. I mean, he's typically more avoidant than that, I think.
Yep, I think that was a really good observation and to call it out. And I think that's an important thing.
He's getting like more, like confrontational. But like in important situations. So she says no at first, but then she says yes, there is. And Ruth tells him that he has to be careful with children and that Taylor has enough instability without David and Keith's relationship confusing her. And David tells her that he's happy for her if this plan is helping her, but she's starting to sound like a crazy person, and it's time for her to start keeping that shit to herself and minding her own fucking business. And then he walks away, and Ruth sips her coffee, just kind of staring blankly, which it's really interesting how when she is getting told off by her kids in these situations, there's never any reaction of like, oh. It's just like, she's just like straight faced staring.
She's just taking it.
Yes, she is just taking it. And I feel so bad for her here. Just like I have in all these other signs, even though I am glad that David said that to her. And I think that it was warranted. She does also have a point, but I think that David is good for Taylor. But Ruth just doesn't have enough info to understand the whole situation. You know what I mean? I think that her heart's in a good place. I don't think that she was trying to like do anything.
Interesting. That is not what I was taking from it.
Really? Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, you don't want to have like, David and Keith are not together. So that's confusing. But David's being this big part of Taylor's life.
Correct.
Now.
I mean, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
And it's like, but at the same time, David was warranted in setting a boundary there. You know what I mean? I don't think it, because he knows he can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ruth was just expressing her concern. I don't think he needed to be that mean to her about it. And I feel bad about that because I feel like she really is just trying to do what's right in her heart. And I think that her heart was just really wanting to advocate for the best interest of Taylor in that moment. But
can I tell you what I was?
Interest is David.
I wonder if David was thinking what I was thinking.
What?
That Ruth, what she was saying.
Like them being gay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not, like, hearing you say all of this actually makes complete sense to me, and I completely agree. But I wonder if I'm
too, if you thought that.
Because when I was watching this, and hearing Ruth say that stuff, I was like, how dare you say that?
Yeah.
Assuming that she was implying about the
gay aspect.
Yes, that David and Keith having a homosexual relationship was going to impact Taylor's life.
Maybe it is. Maybe that is what she was thinking. But she's been so accepting of David.
But then I was like, are you just being fucking fake? I don't know. That's where my mind was going. So that's so interesting.
I was actually surprised too that David was so upset about. So maybe he was thinking that, because why else would he react in that way? Because
I think he took it in the same way that I took it. And maybe Ruth was saying what you were thinking that she was saying.
Yeah. And
it's
it was
possible.
just like not communicating area. I don't know. It is interesting because it wouldn't really. I mean, but okay. So she's been really accepting and supportive of David being gay, but maybe she doesn't think that it's okay for kids to be around that.
Right. Like it's like an R-rated thing.
Yeah.
But they could be around straight relationships.
And that is, she did have kind of a vibe about it at first. Remember, she sprayed that dude with a hose when he came down.
Yes.
So like maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I do just
like she secretly hates the fact that he's gay.
Yeah. I don't believe that I think she's still learning. I think it's honestly a realistic depiction of what it's like for someone who doesn't understand what it is and is trying because they love the person, but they're like have to work through their shit. But I don't know. I thought I really just was so, I think maybe I was giving her too much credit, but I was just thinking about I wasn't even personally thinking about the fact that they were gay or are gay. I was just looking at well, you aren't even together. We really shouldn't.
Which makes sense. Yeah. It's like you don't want in a divorced whatever, you don't want to be bringing over the flavor of the week kind of a thing.
Exactly. Huh. I want to know now. That's such an interesting thing to think about because there's several different combinations of options of what could possibly have been going on in their minds, which is true in the real world. So, okay.
That is so cool.
So Nate and Claire pick up Mr. Mossback, and Claire tells him it's comforting to know that he's just as fucked up as the rest of them. And Claire drives off with Nate in the passenger seat and Mr. Mossback in a cardboard box in the back of the van. And that is the end of the episode.
Hopefully he was on ice.
I don't think that he needed to be because he was already embalmed. That's what David said.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So he was just in a box. So sad, but funny. So mate, date, cremate. I put Melissa, the prostitute, the tour guide on the bus at the beginning who needed a cigarette, and Lisa, which Lisa's going to come back into play. We're probably going to do more mate, date, cremates with her because we just met her and she becomes a major character. But we just met her, so I threw her in. Just based on what we know about everyone in this episode. Melissa does become more of a character too, but not as big as Lisa. Bus driver lady, I don't think we see again. Mate, date, cremate.
Okay.
This is really interesting.
Oh my God. Okay. I will mate Melissa, date Lisa, and cremate the tour guide.
Okay.
And that was a really tough one.
I'll say mine and then we can explain ours.
Okay.
I'm going to meet tour guide.
Okay.
Date Melissa and cremate Lisa.
Okay. So I'm mating Melissa because she probably knows what she's doing. I'm going to date Lisa because I think she would annoy the fuck out of me. But I do think we would have some really good genuine conversations.
She's a lot. Like you say, you're a lot. And I feel
Yeah,
like she's
I think
a
we could
lot.
connect on that basis. We might irritate at each other.
I think that you guys would disagree on some things.
And I wonder how that would go.
Yeah.
Probably well. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, actually. I
Yeah.
think you'd also agree on a lot.
Yes. But then would we lose our voices from talking so much? Like we would I feel like we would try to unpack so many things. Anyways. And then I guess I'm cremating the tour guide. Not for any particular reason.
She's by default.
Yeah.
I
didn't want to kill Lisa yet because I think I'm going to end up killing her a lot.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or cremate.
I'm going to meet the tour guide because she, I don't know, honestly, on kind of mating her by default because I want to cremate Lisa because she was so annoying, and I'm going to date Melissa because she's chill. So
I like that. I would have, maybe I should have switched mine around. I don't know. I like yours. I like your plan.
Logic. Okay, blind ranking for this episode, driving Mr. Mossback.
We have the seizure. That's huge.
Huge.
Oh, wait,
but
time
does
out.
that make you like it or not like it?
We got to do MVP.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're
and
right.
I put into the thing that I think it should be David.
David, because he stood up for himself with the Taylor situation.
He did so many things.
I think so too. I agree. He's our MVP, and my reasoning is like all how he handled Taylor because she's not an easy kid, especially right now.
And with Ruth.
Yeah.
And he probably navigated that conversation with Rico well. I can't remember.
Yeah. They didn't really get too far.
True, and they didn't get to complete it.
But he was at least having it, you know, and not avoiding it.
It was a tough conversation.
So, okay, David's our MVP. Good call. And blind ranking. So far, we have season 2, episode 1 in the game was at slot 5. Episode 2, Out Brief Candle, is at slot 6. And episode 3, The Plan, is in slot 3. So now we're on episode 4, Driving Mr. Mossback. And we have to choose where to put it in this ranking.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I need to think about this for a second because I liked this episode. There was a lot of deep shit. There was the major plot line of Lisa coming into the picture and Nate having a seizure, and Nate
and Margaret
Lisa
and Brenda.
Yep. I mean, that's all a lot, but I'm trying to look at it in terms of just like comparing all of them and like the intro. But so far, honestly, like I still really liked In the Game a lot, and I almost feel like we should have put that one up higher now because.
But we can't, can we?
I don't think so. I don't know really what the rules are like this. But I don't know. This is so hard because we're going to take up all the high spots and then we're going to have really good episodes.
We almost by default have to put this one at like 8.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't like love how I felt watching this one. Like there was a lot of important stuff. But I wasn't just like, oh, I'm into this right now. I'm like, oh, God, oh, you know. Yeah. And it's all important. But I'm like, when I watch the ecstasy scenes.
Yeah, this one was more like the lecture, not the lab.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of college.
Yeah, I hated labs, though. I hated them. I was so bad at science. But I get what you're saying.
Okay. I wasn't good at either of those, so
I dreaded this lab I had to go to it in my freshman year of college because it was so hard, and I still don't know what the fuck it was about or what we were supposed to be doing the whole time. I just had to take.
You just had to get lucky that you get a good lab partner.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. It was more it was a setup and not the.
We're getting all the info.
Okay, so or should we say 8?
I think we have to.
I'm good with that.
And who knows? Maybe that ends up being exactly where we would put it.
All right.
I don't know.
Cool.
Okay, enough talking. Let us go to bed.
Good night. See you whenever we see you next. Sorry,
hopefully
we're doing
next
our best.
week.
I do think that we're just gonna stumble through the summer like this, and then when it's winter again,
let's point that out. We are in Midwest summer, so if you are in the Midwest, you have to understand that the summers are literally nonstop. I will probably look like a potato for the rest of the.
But it's great, and you have to take advantage of that
being
because
outside.
we're cooped up all winter long.
I'm dirty. I'm full of dirt
Yes.
because we're outside playing in the sand, and
It's just not as easy to find the time, but we are. So I commend us for literally still doing it at all. And I do feel like it will be easier for us again when it's not the height of summer anymore. Yeah. And we're still plugging along, and we're still here. We're not giving up. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.